Geneva Business School's first Entrepreneur Live session of the fall 2020 semester. Joining us today, which you've already seen him, is Magnus Jern. A little bit about Magnus. He's a computer engineer and co-founder of 7 companies, including 4 successful exits, a pioneer and thought leader when it comes to mobile apps, clean water technology, innovation, and human-centric design. He is currently involved in the mission of Tap Water to reduce human impact on the planet by providing clean, tasty tap water to everyone in affordable and sustainable ways. Leading the session today with us, we have one of our own faculty members, Antoine Delmas. The floor is all yours.
All right, exactly. Thank you, Paloma, for the intro. That's great. Thank you, everyone, to being here. I think some more people will pop in little by little. That's great. We get people a bit everywhere here for different reasons. One is we have campus in Geneva and campus here, but as well because we are all remotely. So I'm pretty sure some people are in their home countries. So that's great as well. As Paloma said, we started this. We started this in last semester. We did about 4 or 5 of those. 5 of those, I think. And we had different subjects. Went from AI to 5G, to the technology related to that with Jaume, who was sending satellites into space to provide us 5G for everyone. We had as well an incubator from Portugal. So we have very different subjects, and I always look forward for these things because, first of all, because I'm literally passionate about entrepreneurship, and that's what I teach, and my students will know that very well. And because I like to bring people, it's mostly people I know that I have some kind of relationship with, which is great as well, and that they can bring their insights, because I believe entrepreneurship is about getting insights from a lot of different people, and definitely not only by one person. I think that's how you learn, and that's how we get different subjects to talk about. And entrepreneurship is so big. There's so much subjects about it. We need really specialists for depending on the sectors. So I'm really happy to have Magnus here. We talked about that already for a little time, and that's great. Magnus is a friend of mine here from Barcelona. I have a bit of a secret admiration for Magnus, for what he has done, because I think he's done a great job as an entrepreneur. I think he builds amazing things, and there's this path now of having building these very successful companies and in very interesting sectors, and then getting to a point. He will tell us more about this, but getting to a point of, all right, now I've done this, and now I want to make a change, a different kind of change, and I want to give impact. I want to build impact, right? As you know, the word impact now is very much used into a social entrepreneurship and how to make the world a better place. So I'm very happy to have Magnus here. Thank you very much for coming. And the way we're going to do this is going to be an interview, so it's quite informal, asking questions about Magnus' path, and we're going to dive into very specific subjects as well. Then we're going to go in the second part, which is rapid fire questions. And then we're going to have a Q&A with anybody that would be interested to ask Magnus some questions. So to start it off, Magnus, thank you for being here. Can you give a bit of presentation of yourself, a bit of background, so people can locate you a little?
Sure. Super excited to be here talking to you guys, and so thank you for the invitation once again. So I'm Swedish originally, born and partially raised also in the US, and I've been lucky enough to be born into the computer race, with my father being a computer engineer and an entrepreneur very early on. So actually, even at university, I was part of the first startup, which was a web hosting startup around 1999. And we had big companies such as like IKEA and Volvo. We helped them when they built their websites. We helped them to do the web hosting. So which is normally referred to as cloud today. And it was an amazing race. We went from like 2 people to about 100 people in 2 years. And then in March 2000, Intel offered $100 million for the company. and we were all super excited. We're gonna get rich, hooray! I owned 5%, but as a 25-year-old, that was obviously an enormous amount of money. And then our board said we would like to have 120 million as a minimum. They said to Intel, and 1 year later we gave away the company because Intel turned down the increase. They didn't agree to paying more for the company. So in the end, we got nothing, and that was a great learning as a 25-year-old. You know, you think that you've won everything and that you're at the peak of a huge mountain and nothing can stop you, and then all of it is gone. But I think that was extremely lucky actually, because if you look at entrepreneurship, it's never easy, and we learn a lot from our mistakes. It's better to make a lot of mistakes early on and then improve over time, and that's what we did. And then since then, after that, I actually went and worked for a couple of big companies, because I thought as a 25-year-old hiring and firing people and having no idea about what I was doing really, it was good to get the experience from big corporates. So I did that for a few years, and one of them happened to be Vodafone, which was obviously a big company in the mobile space. And there I learned a lot about the early games and mobile app development. So we thought, wow, there must be an opportunity here. Like, it seems like everybody's playing these games like Tetris and Snake and Pac-Man on the phone. What if we could create these games, but for big brands like Coca-Cola and McDonald's and others, and give them to people for free? So that's what we set up a company, and then me and a friend of mine from Sweden who was an engineer as well. So he was going to run the development team and me the sales team, and I promised him that within 1 year we're going to be millionaires. And after 1 year, we hadn't made a single euro in money or in revenue, and he asked me for more money. So and we didn't have any customers. But then 5 months, or 3 months after that, we got our first customer, and actually after 18 months, we were profitable and cash flow positive. And that was the beginning of that adventure, and we managed to time it exactly right. So this was about 1 year before the iPhone launched, and when the iPhone launched and then the App Store, our company went boom. Everybody wanted to have mobile apps for iOS and then for Android, and that's the beginning of a long story. It was a long adventure though. So although we started with this idea of game development, app development, it actually ended up with us building enterprise apps for big companies. So we did mobile applications for banks, for e-commerce companies like H&M and lots and lots of more. So it was a very different business in the end. And in 2012, a big American company offered to acquire us. And this time, I didn't think twice. I just said, "Yeah, let's go for it." So we didn't negotiate as much.
You didn't negotiate that time. That was the learning, right? Okay, good one.
No, we definitely negotiate, but this time, instead of just telling them what we wanted, we were going back and forth and trying to figure out what the business was worth for them to make the best deal for both parties. So that was an exciting journey, and I was also involved in a lot of other mobile companies at the same time. And one of them, and this was also an interesting experience, which was that my dad came to me when he was 63 and said, "I've got this really cool project that we're doing at the university. I'm thinking about maybe turning it into a company." So I ended up actually creating a business together with my dad, who was, like I said, 63. So it's never too late to start a company. And I think 3-4. So I was the chairman of the board. So I was actually the boss of my dad, and then my mom was my boss. So in the end, it trickled down.
You're your boss.
So, and that company also ended up being acquired actually about 3 years later for a lot of money, and it was a very small team, but just a super good niche. So that was also one of my experiences, which was that while my business had 150, 200 employees, his had, I think, 8 when it got acquired, and he made a lot more money from that deal actually. So it's not about having big teams and hiring a lot of people and making a lot of money a lot of the time. Sometimes it's just about finding that little niche, solving a big problem that with something that big companies need from you, and then they'll be prepared to pay almost anything.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning of my story. And then after these ventures and a few others, my plan was to go into early retirement and just invest in startups as an angel investor and help others. But then, just like the person who was speaking before, whose name I can't recall now, was thinking about the issue of bottled water in Spain, we also experienced this for a long time. And me and a German friend of mine were thinking about, like, how can we solve this? What is this issue? What is the problem here? Why do people not drink tap water in Spain? Like, why are they so concerned about it? Why is the taste so bad? And after getting into that and just digging into the problem deeper and deeper and deeper, we finally figured out what it was all about, or we thought at least, and then we started working on solutions. And that's where we are today. So we have the first or second generation of solutions now, which is called Tap2, and the company is called Tapwater. And now we have about 100,000 customers in Spain, and it's growing really fast. So it's hopefully our next billion-euro venture, which is what we're focused on right now. And the main purpose of it is really to have as much impact as possible. So it's all about reducing and eliminating the need for bottled water. But to do that, though, we actually need to create a very profitable business, because otherwise we can't scale. So the other alternative would be to set up a nonprofit or an organization that educates people about this. But then you would always be limited in terms of the access to money from donations and other things. And in our case, we believe that we've created a business that it's sustainable in terms of a business model, and it's also very sustainable in terms of the output, so that we can achieve our mission.
Great, thank you. Great stories. Great story. Great start of the entrepreneurship life, right? Big acquisition, and somebody says no, and I want more, and then you lose everything. But I guess it was a great learning point for sure. Plus, maybe you don't want to earn that kind of money when you're 25. Maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe not. So the sentence, entrepreneur on a mission to reduce human impact on the planet. I guess, so this is obviously connected to TAP. I think that's a very important statement. I think this is a very, very good why, right? This is your higher purpose. How do you, so you think like that as an entrepreneur? This is how you translate it to your business. Really, that purpose is really how you translate that to TAP. And this is how you work. How do you connect that all the time?
Exactly. So it's, I mean, obviously it's for our business, which is, we keep on reminding, because when we speak to potential investors, when we speak to like, obviously, since we're in this space now, we're getting a lot of attention from the likes of Coca-Cola and PepsiCo and Nestle and Danone, so the bottled water industry. It also means we often get asked, so would you be willing to sell your company to one of these businesses? And because we have a really strong principle here, we say yes, we could do it, but we need to make sure that they have the purpose of them acquiring us is the same, like it's aligned with our mission. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. So even if it could make us very wealthy in terms of money, we wouldn't do that. So we can't. Like, the principle is very strong here for us, that the primary mission is really about impact and reducing human impact on the planet. And if that doesn't align with a potential investor or a future buyer, then we wouldn't do it. And it's also aligned with the other things that I'm doing in my life. So it's not just about business. And I think this is important with a lot of the behaviors that we have. It's very difficult to have a behavior that is only in your work. Ideally, it's something that goes through everywhere. So for me, it's also about how we live our daily life. So in terms of like reducing our own human impact on the planet, with travel, the way we shop, and all these things, as well as what are the other things that I'm supporting. So when other people ask me to invest in their companies or to support me with their ventures, I'm trying to be really focused on this personal mission and focusing on the things where I can really have an impact, in the sense of reducing human impact on the planet, and avoiding the other things, even though short term they could be very profitable and positive. But we only have, I mean, the most valuable asset we have is time. So we really have to we have to put our time into the right things. And I think one of the greatest lessons as well throughout the years as an entrepreneur is everything is about focus. So being successful is about focusing your business. If you're trying to do too many things, you're not going to win in one area, and you're probably going to fail in everything instead. So I think it really helps me both in our business life and my personal life, and in terms of other investments today.
I think that's very important. That you transmit that. It's one purpose that applies to your life and to your business. I think it guides you really well. It's your North Star, right? But I guess you didn't. I mean, you didn't have that all the time, right? I mean, when we're talking about impact, what happened? I think there's always I don't know if there's always, or people have this as they're very young, but this impact, isn't that something that grew in you? Because obviously you said tap water, you saw a problem, but it was not any problem. It was related to something that meant something to you at that point, right? But would you have that a few years earlier, right, when you were in a very different space, a very different sector? I'm meaning, like, what happened? Did you this transition? There must be something that happened in your life, right? That said, okay, I've done this. I was successful at this. Now, all right, now I want to do this more. I want to create impact, and I see that in a lot of people at a certain level in their lives, right? It's never too early. It's always when they've done a lot of things. So what's your story about this? Well, how was that transition?
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true, and it's a luxury to be able to do it. So I think it's I've heard from several entrepreneurs saying that a lot of the time you have three stages in life. You have the learning phase where everything is about learning, and it can be doing crazy startup ideas and working for different companies, traveling around the world, just doing things to learn. And then normally the second stage is building some kind of stable base, making enough money so that you have freedom. And then once you have freedom, then it's a lot easier to take on a mission and to think about other things. So it gives you a lot more flexibility. So it's definitely a luxury to be able to change in terms of that. But of course, there's amazing entrepreneurs that do it at from age 20, or Greta from, I don't know, age 14, that takes on this. It's definitely different for different people. But even with Golden Gecko, which was the mobile app development company, we put a lot of effort into doing good. But it's also because it helps align people in the company to do to not just have the purpose of making money for your shareholders. So we noticed this when we sold that company, Golden Gecko, to an American company called DMI. It was a huge, difficult transition because their only focus as a company was to make as much money as possible for the owners. That was it, and there was no hiding about that. It was that was just a and that's
employees. No.
And it's difficult to align so we lost a lot of the best employees over a couple of years there because they just didn't feel for that. Like that wasn't aligned with why they had joined and why they had worked for us. But it's okay as well. I don't think every company can have a strong purpose.
No, but it boosts the culture. It helps for everyone to sail in the same direction, right? To serve something a bit bigger than themselves, to understand it, and there's a lot of, obviously, a lot of talks about that, and there's a lot of studies about that, how culture is changing, and changing the path of the companies. And I know it's much trendier now, that's for sure.
But also related to this, like another difficult thing that you get into. So our first own product, Tap2, was based on biodegradable plastics. So our whole concept was to make it super eco-friendly. And then we realized actually after a year that although consumers loved it and the media and PR and so on loved it, it wasn't actually more sustainable. It was really just greenwashing.
Wow.
And so then we had to make the difficult decision. Do we continue on this path that we know internally is not better, but it's easier for us, or do we go back and do what's right? And we decided to go back and do what's right, and it's a bit harder, but I think long term that's what's going to win.
So it's not easy to keep doing to keep that purpose, right? To keep that impact, right? To keep that direction. It's never easy to choose it's always the most difficult path, right? But as you say, in the long term, that's what for sure is gonna be the most. We say profitable, but it's not the word. That has the most impact. Let's say.
Yeah.
One thing, you Golden Gecko, big company, sold, big exit, leading in mobile apps development worldwide. I mean, come on, it's really something big, right? When you go and then you started Tap Water at the same while you were Golden Gecko, if I remember well. So you were working, but you were not fully there, right? What's the feeling of going back to a smaller, much smaller structure, very few employees, and go back to, all right, let's start this, right? It's already starting. We already have a product, but there's so much to do, right? That excitement of being part of a real startup again, right? How was it?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But it's also suddenly everything that you do has an enormous impact, and you also lose out. You like after a while when you have 500 employees, you're used to, you don't actually have to do that much yourself. Everything is just about telling other people what to do, and then suddenly you're back to having no one to tell what to do. You have to do the things yourself. If you say, "Oh, we need a better website," and then your co-founder says, "Okay, do it."
Yeah, no. It must be refreshing a lot. Okay, so about Tap, what is so let's go a bit through the stages, but the problem, the problem is there. How is it going, right? How is going that path on trying to get that impact and to grow with this? How is it going for you guys now?
So this is obviously like at some case. So you normally you put together a plan, and as an entrepreneur, you have to be very optimistic and a bit crazy. Like if you weren't optimistic and crazy, you would never get into this world. You would just stay in your day job and be happy there, and that's fine.
Definitely.
So in our case, we were absolutely convinced that this was going to be super easy. Here we have a huge problem, which is plastic bottle. Media is talking about it. Bottled water is not necessarily better for you. Bottled water is expensive. Like on average, consumers in Spain spend 340 euros per year. You have to carry home 1.5 tons of water, which is a huge amount, and they just pile up. So our thinking was, this is going to be super easy. Everybody's going to buy this product. So we actually said second year we will get 100,000 new customers for now.
Like every entrepreneur when they start a company, right?
Exactly. And then second year, I think we had 5,000.
Yeah, makes sense. Like every entrepreneur when they start a company.
And then you have to go back to your investors, your friends and family that invested, and said, we're a bit optimistic, but we're getting there. We're making progress, and some are happy and some are not. And so you're constantly, and so it means that on the one hand, you have to constantly review the strategy and what your plans are, how you're going to do it, and how you're going to succeed. But also you have to try to stay focused. So it's this like parallel run. So you're running super fast on one side, and on the other side, you're trying to try to like really stay laser focused on doing the things that work well. And examples of this, like we decided, or I managed to convince our management team. It was about a year ago. I said, let's try to see, like outside of Spain, if we can do with partners, like if we can accelerate our growth by working with partners in other countries. So just find entrepreneurs like us that want to achieve the same kind of mission, and then instead of having to launch ourselves in 30, 40 countries, we work with others. And we did a mini trial with that in January, February this year. And now that is actually generating 30% of our business. And I've been running that on my own until now. And now we're starting to build a team around that. So it's one of those things, like our original plan was to sell everything through our own website and maybe Amazon. And now we've tested and we've found another model that works for us in parallel. So we can actually be successful in both international and in our home market.
That's great. Always in discovery. That's great.
And one of the lessons I had, like what we were told by our investors was like hire an amazing sales guy, Magnus. That's the trick. You just hire someone that knows how to do this, that has been doing this for 10, 20 years, that is experienced in it. But actually, my experience from previous companies is that if there's one thing that is difficult, it's to hire salespeople. Like the best salesperson in almost every single startup is one of the founders. Like it has to be the founders that are the like primary salespeople to start with. So in this case, that's why I actually decided to basically put all my own time into that, and it's worked. Now I have to get other people on board, and that's going to be difficult as well. But it works. I think this idea that if you have a great concept and company and business idea and your service starting to be developed and so on, and now all you have to do is hire great salespeople and the business will fly. It's normally not true. If you can't sell the concept yourself as founders, then it's very unlikely that you will be able to get someone else to come in and do it for you.
Oh, I think that's a very good lesson here. I totally agree with hiring salespeople. It was always a problem for me as well. Lots of great people come to talk and do this amazing presentation, but then very difficult to have the follow-up afterwards, because by definition they can do interviews really well, but then after difficult to get the results. And I agree with this as well, that the founders should be selling. I saw actually, I heard another entrepreneur talking about this and saying that you should, entrepreneurs should always have been at some point in their life through a sales process, right? I've been selling something. And actually the best entrepreneurs are the ones who've actually sold before, right? Because you're going to end up selling your product. And yes, if you cannot sell it yourself, who would be able to sell it for you, right? Very, very important. When it comes to, and that's in general for, so you started saying you saw there was a problem, right? There was a problem and it was a real problem. There's always the idea of maybe the problem is not real or not big enough. Maybe I'm inventing the problem. I think these are common mistakes from entrepreneurs, and that's where this is the foundation of the startup, right? You're going to build everything on top of the problem. The solution you're going to provide, everything is going to be related to the problem you're trying to solve. What would you say about that? How important it is for you, and how much do you have to come back to the problem within the cycles that you have within your startup?
I think constantly,
okay.
Because if you're not, so number one, I think we're way too fast. Like as humans, we love coming up with solutions.
Yeah.
And so if someone presents a problem to you, especially if it's your wife or girlfriend, the first thing you'll do is try to come up with a solution, because it means that you've solved it and you can move on to something else. But most of the time, the thing that the person wants to hear and the thing that you need to understand is what is the problem, because you cannot solve problems without really understanding them. And we spend way too little time in terms of getting through those insights. And a lot of the time, it's based on a problem that you have or a problem that you and your friends have. Which is clearly not enough. You need to make sure that there's a big audience out there. So before we even started any development, we spent time, a lot of time doing surveys. We bought all of the products that we could find out there today to see how they solved the problem. It was like we did, I think during private parties at home, we always did taste testing, so blind testing.
Parties, by the way. Great parties, I have to say. We need those, Magnus. Come back to Barcelona. It's great time.
So yes, like understanding the problem, and you have to keep on coming back to it, and like we're getting to that now. So sometimes, like I said before, we thought that this was going to sell itself, and then we realized after a while that changing human behavior is very, very hard, if not impossible. And the way that you then so that's why even if we have a solution now that we think actually works for most people, if most people don't know about it or don't agree about it or are not willing to do that, then you still haven't gone deep enough. Then you haven't solved the problem. Then you haven't understood the customer need enough. And one of the things that we understood more and more over time is that the only way that you can change behavior is typically through friends and family. So it's the people around you, your community, they can change your behavior. if you see that all of your friends are eating less meat, then you're going to look bad if you're ordering big red meat steaks every time in a restaurant or eating at home. And if you see that your friends are starting to use water filters, they say, oh, in restaurants, they refuse to buy the bottled water, they order tap water or whatever they do, you're going to do the same thing. And that's actually what, so going back to this idea about understanding the problem, that's one of the problems that we have to solve, is that we have to make it a social product. We have to make it something that people talk about, that they recommend to their friends, that they promote, that our customers become ambassadors for. So it's actually not a technical issue at all. It's not a problem about improving the product or the price. It's something completely different.
And makes total sense. I see that with smoking as well. Less people smoking, and so less people smoking as well, right? Because you feel bad about it, and it's true. It's a social construct, right? So problem, the base, the foundation. Then what happens, right? You have to build a solution for that. You have to build a product for this. What's the best for you? The best process framework you can use for that to be able to keep on learning, about the problem, learning about your consumers, your customers, users, where you want to talk about it, whatever. What is the process?
So first of all, if you can avoid getting into hardware, physical things, do it. It's terrible. Hardware is really, really hard, because once you've ordered 10,000, 20,000 of a product and made it, there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the beautiful thing about software. And our idea, since I come from a software background, my idea was really this like user-centric design, agility. So we create something, and then we see what people think about it, and then we improve and we iterate.
And it's easy, right? It's easy to change. It's easy to test. You can do lots of prototypes. Yes.
Yeah. So in our case, you can't do that. So the easy solution for that is obviously to spend years improving your product until you think that it's perfect, and then you launch it. But then it's never going to be perfect. So then you're probably never going to launch. And plus, by the time that you launch it, it probably won't address the customer needs, because you wouldn't have learned anything. So I think even in the case, especially in the case of software, the biggest mistake still, even if we learn about this idea about agility and the minimum viable product and so on, so many entrepreneurs refuse to launch and show the product and show the service until they think that it's amazing, that it's perfect in their own eyes.
Which I think is the biggest mistake there is.
That's one of the biggest mistakes.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I keep on seeing this with clients and other entrepreneurs. Totally.
So in our case, we actually took a product from a Taiwanese company and launched that as our own to test to start with, to get the initial feedback, and that was the easy way of doing it, and then based on that, we could continue to build our own product and learn along the way and continuously iterate. So that was our solution to agility in hardware. Yeah. The other thing that we see is, and my key role at Golden Gecko, at least from 2010 or something like that, was to get all of our customers to implement human-centric design. It was basically to put the user really at the center of everything that we do, to make sure that they were involved at every single step of the process, which was at the time a very hard thing to do. So, and even so, despite having that experience and having done that for I think 100 companies or so, then trying to do that yourself in your own company was still very hard, actually.
Oh wow!
So trying to get, because every time you say, okay, we're going to build a website, before we launch the website, let's test it with 5 or 10 users and see what they think. Let's look at them. Let's get their experience. Let's interview them. And the feedback that you get from the team is, yeah, but we don't have time to do that. And what are we going to do with the feedback? So what I found is that is actually, you need so much discipline to constantly remind your team and yourself about that. You have to continue to test things, and you have to continue to understand the problem that your customers are facing. And it's not it's not that you do that during the first 3 months or the first 6 months or the first 12 months. It's that you have to do it year in and year out. and always improve on that. And in everything that we do, we should always bring in the customer. So like when we got the first products in boxes, then we brought in customers to just look at how, like, what does it look like when they open the box? What does it look like when they install the product? What are the things that they're facing then? And so even if we couldn't improve a lot of those things at the time, we could improve them 6 months later for our next product delivery, and we could improve the guidelines, the help, the FAQ, and all of these things. So yes.
And it's the difficult path, I think. I keep on saying that because exactly what you're saying, I've seen that with a lot of entrepreneurs. Maybe they know about those frameworks, maybe they know about the lean startup and all those loops, right? About building, measuring, and learning and stuff. But somehow a lot of them want to go the quickest way and don't want to take that path because it's the most difficult. It's maybe the slower, and we want to get successful very quick. But on the long term, it just doesn't work. I use a sentence a lot by Tony Robbins, a quote that I tell all my students, and I actually have it all the time, which is don't fall in love with your product, fall in love with your customer. And I think that really sums up exactly this, because we have this thing that we fall in love with our product, which is wrong, and we should do the opposite. We should be able to be agile with this and change it, because it's not our baby. But the customer is really what we have to build a relationship with. So yeah, definitely. And when it comes to you've built a lot of businesses, you've gone through this, and I have always a question about this, about partners, about how does that work, right? How is the co-founders? How do you partner with people? Should you be alone? Should you be two? Should you be three? I actually was hearing to Peter Thiel was saying on the podcast that I was hearing the other day, there was the great number is 2 or 3, 1 is too little, and 4 is too much. But what do you think about that? What do you think about business partners, co-founders?
For me, it's been absolutely essential. Like, it's been so important. I would never do a company on my own. And I think maybe my very first, I had a company that was actually selling, we imported ponchos from Mexico. That was my only own business, and it was a complete failure.
To Sweden?
Yes, my parents ended up buying all of them, giving them away to friends.
Mexican ponchos in the Swedish winter.
Exactly.
I like that. I like that.
And clearly, if I had a partner at the time and maybe another stupid kid, he probably would have told me, like, Magnus, nobody's going to pay for this. And that would have been good enough, and then we would have killed the idea.
Yeah.
So having like the dynamics of having partners and bringing in different skills. And I mean, especially if you're not an engineer, if you're not a software developer and you want to do something technical, you can't hire people into that. You have to get a co-founder that is good at that. Or if you're an amazing engineer, but you hate talking to customers, like you're super introvert, then you have to find someone that is a good sales guy.
Yeah, I agree with this. I'm exactly like you. I don't build businesses alone. And I think there's a dimension as well of it's much more exciting as well, right? Because you're sharing the experience with somebody else. And I think as on a human level, I think it's important as well.
And also considering that there's unfortunately like a 90% chance that you're going to fail.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to fail together with someone else. Then you have someone to go for drinks with afterwards and say, oh, what did we do? And
exactly, I agree. And then you support each other. I have millions of episodes of that, which was really a human strong episodes. You said a bit before, and I caught up on this. The business you built with your dad, you said you found a niche. I think it's always a very interesting subject. You said it was a very powerful niche, very interesting niche in maybe a big market. That's what you said. Can you tell us a bit the importance of that, the importance of the niche? I mean, we know it in marketing as well. The big players are all talking about it. But what does it really mean, right? Is it really that important when you start something, and how do you find it, right? Because that's always the question.
Yeah, obviously it doesn't have to be, but it's definitely a lot easier. Like if you can, I mean, just like let's take waste management. If you can find a way for the waste management, so the garbage trucks that pick up garbage every day, to optimize their route by 10%, you might save one of these big companies 100 million euros per year.
Yeah.
So if you can come up with that little software thing, that idea there, then it's even if you're just a team of 5 people, it's already worth 100 million euros. And that's the amazing thing. And in the case of my dad's company, it was data visualization. So there was a big need for, like, how do you make it easy to visualize data within companies, especially geodata, so geographical data and demographical data. And there was just nobody else that had done that in a good way at the time. So, which suddenly meant that all of the big data analysis companies or business intelligence companies, they all had this gap that they needed to fill, which meant that there was a bidding war for it. And then obviously the other companies ended up doing the same. Like eventually they all end up having to develop it themselves or something. But just having that, I mean, it meant that the company that acquired them had a 2-year lead in the market, which is a huge benefit for them. So whereas this little startup might just have generated 2 million or 3 million euros, but for them immediately that had a value of maybe 500 million.
Wow. Yeah, super interesting. Yeah. So it's not an obligation, but yes, it is. It will facilitate things.
And it's interesting. I mean, another point there, like one of the things that I found as well, it was actually after I left or sold Golden Gecko. One of my ideas was basically, I said, I'm just going to do boring stuff, like boring enterprise stuff that nobody else wants to do. And there is a key to that, which is like, if you look, I mean, number one, if you do B2B or enterprise startups, if you're so if you're, I don't know, at least if you have had a couple of jobs, your chance of success is actually much greater than it is in the B2C space. So for investors, they know that the return on investment is safer. It might not, you might not create the next Facebook or Google or something like that, but actually, generally, your return on investment will be much better, and that actually applies if you're doing a startup as well. Of course, it might not be as much fun to work in garbage management or something like that, but it's something, but it's just as valuable. Like the impact that you can have there is just as great. And I think like not all startups have to be sexy. It's absolutely fine to have a really boring idea and make something amazing out of it and still have a great impact.
Yeah, and for me at least, I don't think it's definitely always about the product, but entrepreneurship is about so many different things, right? And I think it's super exciting to build a team. I think it's super exciting to co-found something with a partner and to build products, and there's so many different phases to it, right? So it's not only the end product in the hands of the consumer. Funding. You've been through that through many rounds of funding, I'm sure, to different stages as well. Because that's a question that appears a lot, that I get a lot from a lot of students as well. Because it's a big topic, and we hear a lot about funding. How would you put this in the scale of difficulty, right? So how difficult it is to get funding, and what would you say about that?
It's super, super hard. It really is, like especially at the idea stage, until you have something which is working, which is proven in some way that it solves a problem. It's very, very hard to get funding, which means that the only people that will fund you typically is friends and family and your network. So you rely completely on that, which is unfair because that not everybody has that kind of network. So that's clearly an issue, but you don't have to have it. Like otherwise, it just means that it takes a bit longer. You just have to find ways of doing it while you still have a job, while you still are doing other stuff. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that it will take a little bit longer. And I think that's okay as well. And then of course, once you've proven that you've solved the problem and you have like a product that customers love, and that's the most important thing, then suddenly it's quite easy. Because then a lot of company VCs want to invest in your business. So then it more becomes about, okay, are you going to be able to get the right valuation? Are you getting the right investors? Will they add value? Are they going to be a great investor in the next round? Will they help you? And all of these things. So then that's actually a bigger problem than anything else. And I guess one of the positive things now with the amount of incubators and accelerators, you're not as dependent anymore on the friends and family. You can actually do a bit more of these things at least. And
Excellent. And when when you get to a point where you need to, you get the idea, you have the problem, it's big enough, it's real enough. You have all the data about this, and you want to build that successful customer base. How do you market your business? What tactics that are the most successful? To get traction and to ultimately get that moment of product market fit, right? Where we can say, okay, I have a product that works. I have enough customers. I know this is really working. Now I can really scale up.
So this is another interesting one where the perception a lot of the time from entrepreneurs is that if I only had €1 million for marketing or for sales, then we're going to be
and everything will go fine.
Yeah. You can't. So spending more money on marketing is typically not the solution to growing your sales and to being successful. And it was fascinating. I had the privilege of speaking to one of the co-founders of Sonos, the speaker company that makes these beautiful connected speakers.
I know.
And it was a couple of years ago, and I asked, so like, what advice would you have given to yourself, like when you started the business? And he said, put all of our energy into PR and as little money as possible on advertising. Because they realized later that the return of investment that they had on PR was so much better than any of their marketing.
Yeah.
So it was about focusing everything on providing like beautiful pictures, showing how people were using the product, amazing stats, interesting research, just constantly getting interesting information to speak to media about. And that's definitely been one of the success stories for us with tap water, which is that it's a product that media is interested in speaking to. But the thing is, you can't just hire a PR agency to do that, because they rely completely on you coming up with all of the ideas. They're not going to come up with the ideas. That what they have access to typically they have better access to you than to journalists. They know who to speak to. They will listen to them, but they still need to have a great pitch. Otherwise, nobody will listen to them. And this is the other thing that we tend to forget about as entrepreneurs, is that it's something that we have to do. We can't rely on anybody else on that. So spending more time on brainstorming, on coming up with ideas, providing a roadmap, making sure that every month you have something interesting to talk about, has a huge benefit as a startup, because it means that you don't have to spend that much money on marketing. And we just look at Tesla, like they're obviously the perfect example of this. They spend almost no money at all on advertising. To my knowledge, actually, they don't spend any money.
Yeah, never seen an ad, but you keep hearing about them, that's for sure, all the time. Yeah. Really good.
And they build in, and that's why they build in these like small gimmicks into the software that suddenly plays like Merry Christmas for you during the 24th of December or whatever it might be. But it's clearly not that those are things that are important to customers, but they are amazing things to get constantly get PR and press. And when the CEO goes and sleeps in the factory for a month and puts his bed in there, yeah, of course, did he really have to do that? Probably not. But the PR effect of doing it, amazing.
Yeah, I remember when I was working for G-Star, when I was still in the employee era, my era. G-Star was at the time as all the brands were endorsing like somebody famous and a famous football player or singer or whatever, they endorsed the world champion of chess player, which was. And it was not as per se, very physically modelly guy, right? That was not at all actually. But the free press and PR they had from that, and they actually told us this in an annual meeting, right? They said this is the results from all the year of what we had, and they actually said this amount of PR equals to that amount of millions of euros of marketing. And they are really understood that, right? You have to create those stories, right? You have to use what you can, even if you have maybe a boring product, to be able to find those stories and try to get this free PR, right? But as you say, you have to work it out. You have to build your stories yourself. You have to spend time doing this because others will not do it for you. Really interesting. All right, cool. So we have a few minutes left. I want to ask you rapid fire questions. You know the drill. I ask you a question and you give a quick answer, and we go through that. So then we can go to the Q&A after. Ready?
Yes. Ready.
What tips would you give when pitching investors for the first time?
So one is look at the Airbnb presentation that is available for free online. It's a great starting point to create a presentation of 10 slides. And second one is like really, you don't need to focus that much on the numbers. Focus on the problem and the solution and the insights, and that you know the customers and that they love your product. The investors will figure out the rest.
All right, good. Airbnb will put that. Paloma, if you can find out, put it in the chat, that'll be great. What was your key driving force to become an entrepreneur?
I think solving problems and working with amazing people.
How to find business ideas? Is there a recipe, tools?
Looking at everyday problems for people and businesses.
Get out of your building and look.
Yes.
When do entrepreneurs know when they have the right idea? When customers pay for it.
Yeah, when customers love and pay for it.
The toughest challenge while building a business?
Scaling to profitability. I think it's easy to do the very start, but it gets difficult after that.
Okay, what to do with competition?
Let them inspire you to do greater things. Like don't see them as like, don't try to copy them and do better things, because normally the reason that you set up the business was that the competition wasn't that great. So don't get distracted by them. Do better.
Most important
metric. The most important, it's customer lifetime value and the customer acquisition cost. That's at least for B2C and actually B2B businesses as well. If you can get that formula right, then the rest doesn't really matter.
All right, everyone, watch this LTV and CAC and look for it. LTV is very interesting as well. Be disruptive or cautious?
Me, disruptive.
In your case, okay. How to find the right mentor? That's a big one as well. Everybody's asking that.
Yeah, I've gone through a lot of different ones, so I can't say that it's been one. But to me, it's actually ask as many people as you can to support you on an advisory board, and then instead of having one mentor, you'll have 4 or 5 or 6, and then you can change them over time.
All right. Tell everyone your idea, or keep it secret.
I've always been telling everybody my idea. I still believe in that. There's not very many people that. And this is the unfortunate. There's not that many people that start companies actually. So the risk of someone going off and copying your concept is very small.
Yeah, and actually somebody is going to leave everything he has in life and change to that. It's small. Yeah. One daily habit.
So this is a difficult one, but I think it really helps. It's like set the objective, setting short-term objectives and planning your day hour by hour is super, super helpful. And ideally you want to do it the night before, because otherwise the risk is that you get into the office and the first thing you do is you start going through your emails, and then after 3 hours later, you're doing something that you're absolutely not supposed to be doing.
Definitely. The Wikipedia, as I call it. What is your favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur?
It's when you feel that you've solved the problem for people and that customers say, wow, I love your product.
Yeah, definitely. How did you handle adversity and doubt? What to do when all seems lost?
Now I'm saying stay calm. I had a moment actually when we were completely out of money. One of our customers was not paying us, and we had no idea when they would be able to pay. We couldn't pay the salaries, so I took all the money that I had in my bank account. I had 0 money left to pay the salaries, and then I went home and went to sleep. And there was nothing I could do. That was the thing. other than what I had done. And so I guess my lesson is don't take it too seriously, because the end of your business is not the end of your life. You can always start over, and there's always time. Like I said before, my dad started his last business when he was 63. So if you think that you can't start businesses at a 30-year-old or 40-year-old or 50-year-old, you can.
I think that's a great message. Thank you. Main skills needed to become an entrepreneur?
Creativity, clearly, agility, so the ability to be prepared to change, and then just getting stuff done. Like that's
makes sense. 3 skills and qualities to be a good leader?
Listen, give feedback, like that's positive and negative, balance it, and try to be a role model. Like if you're not walking the walk, then nobody else is going to either.
Yeah. What was the hardest decision you ever had to make?
So that was actually taking all my money in the bank to pay salaries. To avoid bankruptcy, and the business survived. So a couple of weeks later, the customer paid, and we went off to great things. So it worked, but it could have not done.
Yeah, I did that, but it didn't work afterwards. But that's fine. What has been your most satisfying moment in business?
Celebrating success with amazing people.
Makes sense. If you could start all over again, what would you do differently?
It's probably not like it's more in a every business. It would have been more focus. Like it's so easy to get distracted as an entrepreneur, and we're trying to do too many things, and we want to do many things. But my lesson has always been that it's better to do a few things really, really well than trying to do a million things half-heartedly. So focus, focus, focus.
COVID crisis. Is this the right time?
It's always the right time. The thing is, timing is probably the most important thing when you start a business. But on the other hand, the timing is mostly luck. So it doesn't really matter when you start a business. If you have a great idea, you might be lucky with the timing, or you might not be.
Yeah. Luck versus work versus talent.
You heard it. It's luck with a lot of hard work.
Makes sense. And to end, the big question, I think 90% or even more of startups fail. How do we remedy to that? How we change this? How we make the world a better place with more successful startups?
But do we need to? I mean, this is why one of the big mantras of Silicon Valley is fail fast. Like the faster you can prove that something works and succeed with it, or the faster you can prove that something is not going to work and fail with it, the faster you can move on to the next business idea instead. So helping, and Spain is a really good example of how this definitely not work. So when I came to Spain, there were in Barcelona, there were hundreds of smart startups that had not grown for 5-10 years, and they all lived off different subsidies and survival skills, but they were terrible businesses. And the financial crisis was amazing for them, because they all went bankrupt, and then they moved on to do greater things instead. So that's actually why crises are often good. It means that bad businesses fail first.
But don't you think that a lot of startups could, going through better tools, better frameworks, and and could they be more successful if they had, the opportunity? Founders had more information, they will follow more of those frameworks and stuff, and this, what I mean? Like, wouldn't it be interesting?
For sure. So yes, I mean, like for example, actually really applying lean as a basic part normally it will vastly increase your chance of success.
Makes sense. All right, thank you very much, Magnus. Very, very much. I love this. Thank God we recorded this. That's great. So we're going to take a few questions if anybody has a question. So 16, have you heard of triple clear water in the US? It is also a Swede from Boras behind it.
All right. I actually do not know about them, so I will check them out.
All right, there you go. That's it. Great insight. We have Rominta. How to prevent burnout while working on a startup idea in terms of becoming too obsessed and very dedicated to it.
Wow, I'm probably not a very good person to ask because I don't know. My principle was that if you can't like, yeah. So we definitely worked 80 hours a week or more during the first couple of years, and I felt that was necessary. I think it's probably trying to take time out and just do things in nature and things in life. Like you need time outside of the business for sure. Like going for walks, going surfing, exercise is amazing. Yoga, meditation. I think everybody says meditation nowadays, but I think meditation doesn't have to be meditation. It can be going for a 1.5 hour bicycle ride. It can be going for an hour swim. It can be going surfing. There's so many other ways of just switching off your brain and just enjoying what you're doing. And that's, I think, one of the most important things.
Yeah, I saw this. It was this company. I remember the boss was saying the employees was working and they felt that they had to work so much and everything. And the boss said, "No, man, just go home. I'd rather you go home and be with your family because you're going to be much more productive the day after than if you stay here and burn yourself out and you're not going to have the productivity anymore." Which makes sense. Makes total sense. Yeah, and I have to say, surfing is a very good meditation, everyone. So you don't need to meditate. You can just go for a surf, and that's great meditation. And 16 said, "I think if you believe and you enjoy what you do, you won't burn out." I agree with this definitely. Would you agree, Magnus?
Yes, but I think you could probably still, if you're too obsessed about something, even if you enjoy it, you could probably still burn out.
Yeah, sure. That's for sure. And Melda said that morning yoga and meditation really works. Definitely. Any other questions, people? Anybody want to shoot a last question?
Yeah, I would go first.
Manuel, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. I was just wondering about the tap water company. After it gets more and more successful, would you go bigger, even a bigger scale, and make like bigger like filter systems to actually maybe even help people in poorer countries to have clear drinking water? Or is it just focused on Europe and more get rid of plastic bottles?
So like I said before, I think it's really important to focus in terms of what you're doing, but it doesn't mean that you can't test and do other small experiments. So yes, like definitely, like one of our ideas early on has been to build a profitable business in Europe, which allows us to then put more money into R&D and into products that we can launch in developing countries where they have considerably less money. So you're going to make less money there. So it's very difficult. If you were to go directly there, and we've seen hundreds of startups do that, most of them fail because there's just not enough money in those markets to survive.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm asking that you build up a base here and then go eventually with knowledge as well, go to other markets and then develop there something. Yeah,
Completely agree.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Odon, last question.
First of all, thank you, Magnus, for all the insights. It was really valuable. And I have two questions, actually. One of them, it's pretty personal. So just understanding if you as an entrepreneur, do you have any specific rituals in your day, things that you believe that set you up for success? And the second one would be in terms of pivoting from one idea to another, when do you feel like it's the right moment? And once you decide to actually do it, should you sort of do it gradually or immediately switch from one idea to the other? What are your thoughts on that?
So number one, I mean, one of the things that I believe, and it's great both for personal life and business, it's the basic ritual of, and there's so many different versions of this. There's like the Buddhist version, which I think is 7 questions, but the most basic one is, one thing that you're grateful for, one thing that you've learned from something that was hard or difficult, or that you just learned during the day, and something that you look forward to tomorrow. And that's just one of those basic things to end the day with that, or to start the next morning. It's a great start of getting positivity and getting your thoughts out. And the second thing for me personally there is just getting out in nature, getting exercise. Like if we sit by a desk all day, we're not made for that as humans. We're definitely not, and especially in the winter time, we have to really think about that. Like just get out in the middle of the day, get out for an hour and go for a bicycle ride or whatever you can do. Like get out there. It's going to help you. And to answer the now I completely lost the second question was, give me the clue.
Pivot.
Pivoting. Yes, I think the lesson is do it fast, like do it directly. These slow changes typically don't work. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're gonna have to that you have to completely discontinue the things that you're doing. But if you're gonna change, then focus on doing that instead, because otherwise you will just confuse people.
Yeah, I got it.
And I think if you look at most successful companies that pivoted, it was because they did exactly that.
Yeah, and you communicated immediately to customers if you had any on the previous solution.
You better have the new solution ready before, otherwise it's going to be confusing for them. But yes.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Magnus. Thank you everyone to being here. Really was really interesting. I love those talks. As I said, is passionate about entrepreneurship. I think everybody here as well had a great time. We're a bit over time, but thank you all for your time. This is recorded. This will be posted as well on Paloma on the social media on YouTube of Geneva Business School, I guess.
Yeah. Yes. Once marketing edited, it's on YouTube.
All right, we will edit it and we will post it, and yeah, you will be able to see that there. If anyone think about other questions to tell Magnus, you can always then forward them to me, and I'll figure out a way to take a bit of more Magnus time somehow. I'm sure he'll be glad to answer that. It's a system that works. It gives you a bit more time to think about what to ask, which is always interesting. So don't hesitate to do that. Send it over to me, and I'll make sure you get some answers. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, Magnus.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.